Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Kanye West. And the award goes to Kanye West. And Kanye would like to thank Kanye West. Now, let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by The Hard Deck. Grab a drink and be nice to the bartender at The Hard Deck. Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers. We make things. And we like to use this opportunity to analyze, discuss films from that standpoint of what we know and understand about the filmmaking process to illuminate some of those things to you, the listener. Hopefully, other creators. I feel like everyone is a creator in their own right, even if it doesn't translate from what we do in a direct way. I think some of the ways that we just think about film could inform and help other people in the way they think about whatever it is that they're creating. Because it's a very holistic approach, I feel like, is what we usually aim for, even if sometimes it, whatever gets a little down in the details. Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. I think that that's a good point. I haven't actually thought about that, but we talk about movies, but really we're talking about stories, or we're talking about just creating something specifically, when, I think, one of the things I like about what we do is that we don't just tear movies apart. In fact, we go out of our way to find, amazing things in films that we do not like. And I think that says a lot, because it's so easy to just tear a film or tear something creative apart. And that's not our goal here. Our goal here is to find what decisions were made, why we think they were made, and to get down to the human element of it. And I think because we get down to the human element of it, that's how it's relatable to other mediums, whether that's music or that's, entrepreneurship, or, that's whatever might be your thing. So yeah, great point.
Yeah, I like the way you phrase that, the human element, because at the end of the day, we're talking about the psychology of people and how we relate to this and that. And just because, we're relating it to storytelling, which is universal. I feel like every industry uses storytelling in some form or fashion, even if sometimes a little more abstract, right? Programming, even, you might think this is the most ones and zeros things of all time, but at the end of the day, you're programming for people. And if you're a programmer not factoring in how people interact with your program, that's a psychological thing, right? You're going to fail. The best programs are factoring in actual real world use cases. So it's all a part of the great human experiment, if you want to call it that. Yeah. What experiment are we looking at today, man?
Yeah, so we are reviewing the new Top Gun Maverick, which just came out. So if you haven't seen it, please pause this episode and go. I would recommend watching both of them, the first one and this one. You will get more out of Maverick if you watch Top Gun 1, which is so weird to say, Top Gun 1. If you go watch that first, so because we're going to spoil a lot of stuff.
For sure. We'll look at a handful of things. We'll look at some of the story and writing. Ask the question, do great artists steal? And who is Mary Sue? As well as some of the cinematography briefly, like some of the way they use natural lighting for continuity, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis. After more than 30 years of service as one of the Navy's top aviators, Pete Mitchell is where he belongs, pushing the envelope as a courageous test pilot and dodging the advancement in rank that would ground him. It's directed by Joseph Kosinski, screenplay by Ehren Kruger, Eric Warren Singer, and Christopher McQuarrie, and cinematography by Claudio Miranda, starring Tom Cruise as Maverick, Val Kilmer as Iceman, Jennifer Connelly as Penny, Miles Teller as Rooster, John Hamm as Admiral Simpson, Monica Barbaro as Phoenix, and Glen Powell as Hangman.
What the hell? Good morning, aviators. This is your captain speaking.
And we're off.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
going into combat on a level no living pilot's ever seen.
Not even him.
You think up there you're dead. Believe me.
My dad believed in you. I'm not gonna make the same mistake.
Someone's not coming back from this.
Those are your pilots. Anything happens to them.
Smoke in the air! Smoke in the air!
You will never forgive yourself.
No turning back now.
Come on! Jeez! Having any fun yet?
So
Can we watch it again?
Oh, Todd, on a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointing was this movie?
0. I haven't had an experience in a theater like that in a very long time, and maybe even ever, if I'm gonna be completely honest. And I mean, I almost don't even know how to put it into words how it felt. And that's why at the beginning of this, when I said you should watch the first one before watching this one, I love that we did that. I love that we did Top Gun 1, and then 2 weeks later I'm in the theater watching Maverick. Like it was like everything, all of the things that they needed to tie up, they tied up, and they have like Easter eggs everywhere, and like they, just harken back to this little thing and that little thing, and it was just wonderful. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm thinking, this might be for this movie, the perfect script. The whole time I was thinking, I know what they're going to say. I know what they're going to do. And in times that did happen, but it was in those times I was like, I felt warm feelings when I would guess what they would say or do or whatever. I felt like actually like, oh, I'm glad that happened. And there were other times where I thought I knew it was going to happen and it didn't. Like why Rooster is really mad at Maverick is not just because of his dad. And I thought that's such an amazing wrinkle.
Yeah.
He kept him out of the Navy because he wanted to take care of him. He wanted to be the dad that Rooster didn't have. And so, and that's really why he was mad at him. Stuff like that, like, is all over the movie for me. And I mean, I thought the script was incredible. I thought the acting was absolutely perfect for what it needed to be. I thought that the inclusion of Iceman as he's dying is fantastic. And that Iceman is the one who went up in the ranks, right?
Yeah.
They got all the characters spot on. Like Pete's character is exactly who he would be, and I think that has a lot to do with Tom Cruise, not just the writing. Like he understands. That's one brilliant thing about Tom Cruise, man. And people can love him or hate him, but that guy loves cinema and he loves his roles. Every role he does, and we've talked about him at many times on this podcast. Every role he does is 1,000% that. And yes, it's because he does his own stunts, but it's also because it's just because he loves it. And you can tell. I'm sitting there, the first thing I see in the theater is him sitting there saying this is a labor of love. It took a lot of people before the movie even starts. I don't know if they did that at Alamo. Did they do that at Alamo where he like talks to the crowd? There were a lot of people made this and we made it for you. I almost started crying. Because I know what a labor of love this was. It started filming before the pandemic, and they had to pause a lot because they had to learn how to fly fighter jets and stuff, but the whole cast was part of it. They were the ones that had the cast had to like manage their cameras in the fighter jets because they're in a jet in 5,000 feet, 10,000 feet in the air. You can't have a cinematographer there with you. So, make this adjustment. Oh, you're a little out of focus here or something. Adjust this. They had to learn all that stuff. And that takes time. It's not like you just know how to do it. And anyway, I don't really know what all to say, which is so funny because I texted you right after I saw it. It's like, have you seen this yet? Because it's freaking, I really want to talk about it. But I think I just want to get into the conversation. I want to know what you thought, and like, if like just start talking to you about it and what you think.
I think you said it really well in terms of, I haven't had an experience like this in a while in a theater. And that's because what haven't we seen?
Yeah.
We've seen worlds explode. And once you've seen like the destruction of the universe, is there really anything left to show us on a movie theater screen? And it turns out, yeah, there is. Like, we haven't seen. Top Gun was great, but Maverick actually let us be in a cockpit in a way that we haven't experienced, because we've been in cockpits before. Don't get me wrong. Like, they were filming Dunkirk, right, in a plane, but there's a massive gap between a World War II plane and an F-18, right? Like, those are just worlds apart. And so seeing that and feeling it on a theater screen, like, I am tempted to go catch this in IMAX just to see what that experience would be like, because it is so unique and it was refreshing. I will say I saw this twice. The first time, it peeled my hair back. The second time, I would say I got about 70% of that rush, and so there is a diluting effect. I might need to give it a couple weeks, so I can resensitize.
I mean, it literally came out on Thursday, and you've seen it twice, and this is Sunday.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably need a little buffer.
Maybe a little buffer, but we've never seen or felt this before in a theater. And this is certainly like the DOD's wet dream of, let's put our coolest stuff on screen and drive up recruitment. Because if you're 15 watching this, there's a high degree of chance that you're going to be like, I think I want to be in the Navy. I want to be a fighter pilot, right? Uh-huh. I mean, Top Gun did that. The number of people that I've bumped into. I met a guy back when I was doing clinical research trials. You just meet all kinds of interesting people, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm joining. I'm going to be a pilot because I saw Top Gun." Like, that's a real world effect that this has on people. And I mean, right or wrong, I don't really know or care, to be honest, but but I understand it. I'll say that because you just never felt the way you feel when you're watching them do some of these things. And you can tell they designed certain, like the big mission, they designed around the idea that we want to invert and accelerate in order to and so they designed the mission around that visual, right? Like, at the end of the trailer, you see Tom Cruise like invert, and then he hits those whatever afterburners. I don't know what the hell is going on in there. Sure. The big scary jet engine stuff, and you see the intensity of it all, and it's visually and aesthetically, from a like deep visceral reaction to it is just there, and it pushes you, and you feel it. You feel everything happening on screen. And I mean, the technical wizardry that was required to execute all this is nothing short of magic to me. What they had something like 6 cameras, installed in a lot of these jets, just so that they could capture everything that they're capturing. Now, I know Tom Cruise is a pilot. Was like Miles Teller actually flying his jet, or was he in like a combo, a 2-seater, and they were like faking it? That part I'm not clear on. I didn't look it up. I don't know if I was interested in ruining that for myself or not. But do you have any clear understanding of that, or just assumptions like me?
So I know that they learned to fly. Yes. Okay. As for if they flew as much, and as detailed as Tom Cruise, I don't think so. I really don't. I think that, and I could be wrong, but I do know that they learned to fly those jets. They learned how to fly jets. So that alone, it doesn't even matter, honestly, to me. Yeah,
same.
But every shot you see of Maverick, like, he's actually flying that, and that's totally fine. I'm fine with all that, I don't think that they're going to trust a $30 million plane or $10 million plane with Miles Teller necessarily,
or to some other scale rate, SAG actor.
Yeah, exactly. So, and a lot of those shots you could kind of tell that like they were sitting in the back, so because you couldn't see anything behind them, like there was like a wall behind them essentially. And so I think they were technically sitting in the back of the plane, and they had an actual pilot in the front. But I do know that they learned how to, so that it would feel more real. Like, like they learn how to bank, and they learn how to, sorry, it's loud. They learn how to, do the breathing when they hit 8 Gs and stuff. And you can see it.
Yeah.
You can see it on their faces when they hit those Gs, and their skin pulls back, and they're doing that breathing that they have to do. That is real. That is all real. And it makes it, I don't think we're going to see a movie like this in a theater for a very long time, if not ever.
It does take a Tom Cruise on board to pull this off.
Right.
And to your point, everything that you're saying is important because it's underscored by Tom Cruise coming up on screen before the movie. It's the new version of this is based on a true story, right? Like it makes audience take in what they're watching differently when 100%. Hey, we filmed these in actual F-18s. And so you don't assume, oh, look at all this CG. You're like, oh no, they're in actual effing planes.
Yes.
And that changes
everything. It changes how you experience the turns when they're in the valley and they're turning and there's mountains on both sides and everything. Or he does the inversion and then he hits the afterburners and you can see the air going over the wings all of a sudden. And you are literally there with them, as opposed to saying, how did they do this in CGI? Right. Which 9 times out of 10, you're always saying, and that's fine. That's totally fine, but the other reason I say that I don't think we're going to see something like this maybe ever is because of where it came from, right? It came from a great movie 35 years ago. A great movie 35 years ago that made a statement that hasn't really been made since, when it comes to like air combat and death. Like Goose's death is one of the most iconic deaths in all of cinema. And so to have all of that and then have this movie 30 years later that is better in all the ways, and not just better, in air combat, not just better in acting, but better in writing and in story. The story I thought was amazingly strong. So in the original, we won't talk about it too much because I think you should go watch the episode. Or listen to the episode.
I think it's totally fine.
We can do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in the original, the dogfight at the end is good. It's good, and I think that dogfighting doesn't really happen as often, so it's like entertaining, right? And it's amazing how they did that in 1986, and we talked about that. But this is on a whole nother level, and the mission itself is on a whole nother level. Now they absolutely stole it from Star Wars.
Yes, that's my "do great artists steal" comment.
Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. We're getting into that.
Yeah.
And I saw that, but while I was thinking about this film, I was thinking, what are they going to do? Like how are they going to make this a thing that is 1, believable, 2, unbelievable, and 3, not like very on the nose. And they did it in a brilliant way. We didn't identify who the enemy is. No idea who it is. Could be Russia, could be
could be Iran, could be China, North Korea,
it's just in uranium, right? Whatever. Yeah. So we don't identify with that. We make it so it's an almost impossible thing by putting it in a valley between 2 mountains. So it's like almost impossible to do, because you also have to fly 100 feet off the ground, going Mach 87, and then you have to go up and down and then back up again and without passing out, right? And then you have to dogfight. They made it as big as you possibly could. And then on top of that, they make the fighter jets against them way stronger, better, faster. And they show you that. The shot, the most amazing shot in the whole thing for me was when that first jet that I think Tom Cruise is fighting, I can't even remember, flies past, or he tries to, I don't even know, flies past him and then just stops in midair, does this whole barrel turn and then just like goes down, or like does this, and they hang on it. They show you.
Yeah, it's like a progressed version of Tom Cruise's hit the brake, or Maverick's hit the brakes and let him fly right by. It's like 10 times more effective because, he pulls up and just kind of flat spins behind them.
Yes,
and
that's
then, it. Lands and he's just right on target already.
But the brilliant thing about that is that they don't cut away.
Yeah.
They stay on it because, you're dogfighting. You're going to have like, quarter second shot here, quarter second shot there at best. Like here's 12 frames. Here's, but this, they stay on it for a good 5 seconds. They let you see without cutting what this thing can do. And they show you Maverick's reaction to it. Like, holy shit. So now it puts this whole thing into perspective of like, Maverick is the best of all time. And he is amazed at what that can do. Oh shit. Now we're getting into it. And that's I think it's towards the beginning of the dogfight, right?
Yes. Because I think that's important to point out. All that is because it's getting back to the point. And then, to finish probably your thought here, like they remove him from his nice F-18 and put him back in an F-14. And which is relevant, not just for the throwback vibes, but it's important because I think the thesis that they're trying to make throughout this film is that it's not the plane, it's the pilot. And the more you can strip away the plane, the more you can prove that thesis, right? And it's a comment that we open with, right? He's flying this big, bad, fancy new scramjet, but he's being told you're going to be replaced, by unmanned aerial, vehicles, drones, basically. And now we're on a mission, so to speak, to prove that that's not where the future of aerial combat lies. It's in the instinct of a really talented pilot. Jesus. I corrected myself and doubled down.
Leave that in.
Will do.
And putting Rooster in the back seat.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Come on.
That was one of the things I really loved is that they didn't resolve I think you made a point it didn't occur to me that the wrinkle that they threw with the Rooster Maverick storyline wasn't that he killed his dad, right? Or that his dad died under Maverick's piloting, which is still used. He still throws it in his face, right? That's a nice punch, and you got to use it. But that isn't really the issue at hand. It is something more layered and textured, which is a really great idea. One being his career and how Maverick stood in the way of his career. And I love the extra layer that Maverick wasn't doing it to be a jerk. He was doing it at the request of his own mother. Great, whatever. A lot of nice things to have floating around in the air, right? And you touch on it and you don't touch on it again. And now you're sitting there wondering, is he going to let him know? Because if he doesn't tell him, how does Rooster get over it? How does Rooster move beyond what he's upset about without knowing the actual truth? He never got to hear the actual truth, which is the right move. If I'm Maverick, I don't tell him. Like I wear that one. But I love that they didn't resolve their issues until the third act, whereas other scripts would have resolved it in Act 2 so that they could threaten it in Act 3, right? Oh, we're buddy again, but now our relationship is in jeopardy because of whatever, right? Whether it's life and death or maybe a new secret comes out, right? They find another way to jeopardize that, and instead they held it back, which I thought was great to build their tension. And we don't know where they stand with each other. And you start to feel like maybe they're working through it on the deck of the whatever ship, battleship. But they don't. He's just like, we'll talk about it,
when you get back.
Yeah. And so there's something there enough to let you feel Rooster would do the things that he's about to do, because you need that too. You can't just have him. Although that would be an interesting way to take it too. He's still mad until he bails out Maverick, right? This is a middle finger to you. That could be an interesting path to take as well. But it wasn't. I thought much more interesting way to build on their relationship is to start to level things off, but don't resolve it until we get beyond, right? The mission is where we kick off the third act, in my opinion. I guess you can splice it a lot of different ways. Sure. But I love that. A lot of great tension throughout the film. That's the only relationship we care about in this film. At least me, walking in and walking out throughout this entire movie, and I'll get to Penny. But this is the only relationship I actually cared about in the entire film. And I love that there's neither one of them have a mea culpa, right? They both just learn to live. It's just two men learning to live with each other's flaws, and that's family.
Yeah. I had a couple of things before you get into your notes, really, that I just wanted to say that reasons I loved it.
Yeah,
I'll go quick.
No.
I'll go quick.
Take
First,
your time.
I love that there's no actual love scene, because I hated that about the first one. I didn't like it. I thought it was corny as hell. It was very 80s. It was just God, get me. I don't care about this. Get me out of here. Whatever. And so when they were going to get into it, we just cut, and they're laying in bed and they're talking. That's what I want, because I want the story to progress forward. That does not progress the story forward, me watching them, whatever. And he's like 70,000 years old, so I don't want to see that. I mean,
do. Show me the humping.
I do.
Let's get back to the humping.
Oh yeah, right.
Okay.
I mean, I don't mind with Jennifer Connelly. I guess the point is, they didn't waste any time. I didn't feel like any of the time was wasted, and I loved that. When they cut to them laying in bed, I was like, "Thank you, oh my God, thank you." The second thing is that I loved that the whole time he was teaching, I didn't expect him to fly. I thought that this is the story. The story is he's going to teach, and then one of his students they're going to go into this battle, and one of his students is going to die, and he's going to blame himself or whatever. It's going to be tragic. But I didn't expect him to fly. I just didn't. I was taking the story on its face, and I thought that he was just going to be the teacher, and that's where he's at least for the final, because he did a ton of flying in the training, and I thought that's what we're getting, right? But he's passing the torch to a new group of fighter pilots, right? And that was the story, because that's the typical story that you get.
And that was largely the first one, right? Viper was flying with them, right?
Yes.
But he was passing the torch. At no point do you expect him to strap it on and start firing missiles.
Exactly. And so maybe that's why I thought that, because of the first one. So when the commander said I'm in, and as a harken back to the first one, I'm in such a tough place because in one hand I gotta whatever, they do the same thing in the first one. And when he said, or I've got to make you squad leader, Tom Cruise's reaction to like be so like excited he can't help but speak was amazing. It was exactly how I felt. I felt like, yes, give it to him. I want to see him fly this mission, and he did that for me on screen. He jumped out and like had a reaction. And then the guy was like next to him was like, okay, just chill out, whatever. So I loved that he actually got to fly, even though I didn't expect it. And maybe you saw that coming, obviously. And I think probably 90% of people saw it coming, but I just didn't. And I loved that. I also thought that the football on the beach scene, because I also hated the volleyball scene in the first one because it didn't take the story anywhere. It was stupid. These guys don't like each other, so they're playing volleyball, but nothing is resolved, right? Yeah. This is pointless just to see them with their shirts off. But this actually had a meaning. It was team building. They were playing offense and defense at the same time, so it was different. It wasn't like they were just like playing against each other in a normal way. And Miles actually helps him up when Rooster helps Pete up when he falls and whatever. There was a meaning behind it. And I actually liked that, and it didn't last for a super long time. I liked it.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I'll say is just, there was also this air of Pete's character to find a way, no matter what. And we start with him finding a way for to keep his people on that project of that plane. Oh, he's coming to shut us down? We're going to go for Mach 10. We only need Mach 9, but we're going to do Mach 10 because we really got to prove it, and we got to go right now. And it just opened up with that. And what an incredible way to open this movie. And the wide shot of this plane, where you can see the curvature of the earth and the plane going Mach 10, and the trail it's leaving and how it turns. It was just fantastic. So he found a way at the beginning, and it wasn't just for himself. Yes, the actual 10.1, 10.2, Mach 10.3, and then he blows the plane up. That was for him. But everything up until Mach 10 was for everyone else. And is very much the same way when he stole the plane at the end to prove that the mission was possible. It wasn't because he wanted to go. He knew he wasn't going to go. In his brain, it wasn't happening for him. But what he wanted to do was to prove to his trainees that this is possible. You can do this. Watch me do it. If you see, it's just like running a 4-minute mile. It was impossible until somebody did it. And then since then, dozens of people have done it. Somebody does it every year. It was the same thing there. He's like, I'm not doing this for him. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for you. Watch this. And I know I'm going to get court-martialed. I'm going to get, this is the last time I'll be in an airplane. I know that. And he did it anyway. And he found a way. And that was after Penny said, you always find a way. He was like, he knew he was going to be grounded. And so anyway, I loved that too. That hella special in my heart. So.
No, I love that scramjet sequence. What a great way to open the film. For one, it's just gorgeous, right? Like you said, they had these beautiful, nice, wide, artsy angles. Like some of them are just, I don't want to call it boilerplate, but you're just wide and in the air. You don't have to do a lot. But they did more than they needed to. And it works so well when they do these Dutch angles, right? We kind of tilt into this Dutch angle where we go lopsided to follow the plane as it's whipping by. Just gorgeous, and all these subdued natural tones, right? It's very sunrise, golden hour kind of stuff, which makes sense. It's the beginning of the film. Let's stay in that kind of early morning, visual aesthetic. And it's just this nice gradient on the horizon, clouds, and it's the music, right? It's magic vibes. It almost feels like you're watching Do the Right Stuff or Apollo, testing stuff. It's so good.
Hans Zimmer, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
I looked it up right after the film. I was like, who did this music? And it was Hans.
It was him and someone else though, right? They had two composers on it.
Yeah, well, the original composer from the first one.
Oh, they gave him credit. Okay.
Yeah, because they use his music.
That makes
all
sense.
Over it. So,
yeah. I was confused because I read a lot of the credits in the opening, and I saw that and Hans Zimmer. I was like, whoa, wait, what's going on here? So that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah. But I love how it ends. That sequence ends with him walking into the cafe and drink. Just what a great comedic punchline, where it's not hammed. It would be really easy to overplay that, and it's a fine line to walk. But it's just everyone's quiet, everyone looks. He doesn't try to be funny. No one tries to be funny in this scene, and that makes it funny. But he drinks the water, and while drinking the water, right, he's kind of looking at everyone looking at him, sets it down. He asks a simple question because he's like, where am I? And you have the little boy, which is the best role. You can imagine what he's seeing is a spaceman, and so his natural reaction is just say Earth.
Yeah. I thought he was gonna say 2022 or something, but he says Earth, and it's great. You're right. It's great to give it to a kid because, in a typical 80s movie, it'd just be like a trucker or something, might say that, which is not nearly as entertaining and fun as like, a 7-year-old kid.
Right. Cause you buy into his reality. You wouldn't buy into a trucker's reality.
Right.
And that's perfect. But overall, I think that the whole scramjet sequence is great because you need to reestablish who Maverick is, right? And but which it does, right? He's that cocky guy who's going to push the boundaries, break the rules, right? He wasn't supposed to go up, but he did it anyway. But it also doubles down. I love your point. It wasn't just for him, although you can certainly make that leap that it's also for him. But it wasn't just. It was to save everyone else's job and to save the project, and maybe even to save Piters writ large, because because pilots are being removed, and he's saying, I need to save this in order to save other jobs of my kind, to save my own job, and my people. And so, but that sequence is also great because I think it feels different from the rest of the movie. So it's kind of a bonus because we kind of forget it.
Great point.
As the movie wears on, you're in different jets, you're in different lighting scenarios. So it doesn't really weigh us down on the runtime. And I think that's one of those little tricky maneuvers to make the movie feel a little shorter than it actually is. I think it's really smart.
The sky is dark. You're right. The lighting is totally different. The sky is dark. It's like at dawn. And then all the other times they're in planes or even just period, it's almost always daytime, except for, a few night scenes or whatever. But when they're in the planes, it's always during the day. So yeah.
It works really well. And talking about the opening, also love that they use the exact same intro, right? Same title sequence.
Yeah. Yes.
Same music. And they heard your cry, man. Because much better transition cut.
Much better. I was waiting for it too. I'm so glad you called that out. I was waiting for it, and I was listening. I was like, oh, okay, that works. That works. How they cut to it. Yeah.
An actual like on the edit. Nicely done. Going back to like more cinematography here, like it seems like in that opening sequence, a lot of natural lighting. And I think when you're outside, they largely tried to stay with using as much. Now it's hard to tell because this is such a big project and you have a lot of talented people. Maybe it wasn't actually natural light, and maybe it was just super diffused. I definitely know they used a ton of diffusion throughout the film, but I think they were trying to use as much natural lighting as possible in order to help keep continuity or consistency with the limited setup that they had in the F-18s, because they couldn't control anything in there. Like they had to largely guess at the exposure. And like you said, they have actors making focal adjustments. And so you want to not make a big contrast between what you're seeing there and what you're seeing in other parts of the film that are similar. Now they certainly break that in other ways because like, for Penny, they have a ton of big soft boxes. Like whenever you see her after that boating sequence and she gets home, she walks inside and she closes the door and she leans back. That's a massive, big soft box that they have like right on her face. And it's beautiful. It's beauty lighting. And they do the same thing with the nighttime beach scene when it's her and Maverick on the beach talking about whatever, the mission and life and death or whatever. But my point with that all is that that's totally unmotivated. Like there's no logical place that lighting is coming from. As opposed to the bar scene when you have all those pilots standing around the pool table, they're motivating that lighting. They have a very similar lighting, almost exactly, to those other scenes, except they're motivating it through that pool table light. The light that dangles above the pool table is motivating all their lighting. And so that's very motivated because you can see within the scene where that light comes from. Whereas like on the beach, not really. I think the stretch that you can make is that the Christmas lighting is motivating. Nah, like not really. No. And there's certainly nothing in her house that makes me think there's this massive light, 2 feet from her face. But it works. My point isn't that it stands out. My point is that it actually works really well. It's gorgeous. And I think it works because we want to see her in beautiful light. And it's just aesthetically pleasing. And so no part of you, reacts by, oh, this is so Hollywood. Instead, you react by, man, this is beautiful. They walk the line really well, choose their moments really well. And it's gorgeous. It works. Like if you know when to pull those levers, you'll be better off for it, not worse. The other, moving into more story and writing stuff, there is so we have a new mission. Great. Like before I get into the fun stuff, I want to just point out some of my spotty things that we might disagree on, I guess. But to me, it's just spotty, kind of absurd. Like you mentioned that they don't point out where we're at. Like, who is this country? There is no country. They just say the region. They don't say what region, just the region that this is in. And to me, it's pretty funny because what they're really doing is trying to keep it inoffensive for the global audience, right? You don't want to point out China because that's a big audience now. And you've already done Russia, but to their credit, they really don't point out Russia in the first film either. It's kind of implied lightly, very, very lightly, but you'd be forgiven for not knowing. Like growing up, we never said, yeah, we're shooting down Russians. It was just, I'm Tom Cruise and I'm a fighter pilot. Like it was never about the bad guy. It was always about our guys. And for that, I actually appreciate, while I think it's kind of absurd in, the modern era to not say who or what we're fighting. I also do appreciate that you're not making it about the enemy. You're making it about your own guys. And with that, I do find it super absurd that there's some other country out there that has these better mystical 5th generation jets. No, no, not on your life. Nobody. And to me, when I see this kind of stuff, when I see the wonky laser that, keeps messing up, I mean, maybe there's some reality to that. But to me, when I see, there's better jets out there and our equipment is sometimes failing. To me, it screams the DOD is begging for trillions more in R&D.
Good point.
That's all I see with that. Like you have an F-35 project that's already cost somewhere between $400 billion and $1.7 trillion. Like y'all are good. Y'all could use less money. Go to hell. But so that's kind of absurd to me. But I do, and this is something we've lightly already touched on, but I'd love to hear more of your thoughts about it, because they do rip this mission straight out of Star Wars. Like it is nuts and bolts, almost a 1-to-1 ratio of the exact same mission. You double the ships, I guess, but that's about the extent of it, right? It's the Death Star run. The targeting system doesn't work, and he has to use the Force. I mean, don't think, just do. There is no try. Wait, what universe are we in? I forgot. But it's directly ripping a lot of Star Wars stuff. And what's funny is I asked my roommate about that, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't recognize that, I should say." And maybe your favorite quote is the Bono quote of every artist is a thief, and so I'm asking you, do great artists steal? Like I would rather Top Gun, Maverick steal that story idea. And they did a bunch of other stuff with it. It wasn't just the trust your instincts, use the Force. That is very 1-to-1 of Star Wars, but they use it in all these other ways, right? To prove the mettle of the teacher and all these other things, whatever. But I would rather see Top Gun do that than like Star Wars recycle their own storylines. That to me is a much greater offense than someone else taking your storyline and inserting it. But how do you? What's your view on just for lack of more couth, stealing someone else's storyline? Talk to me, Goose.
Okay, so the only thing really, when they're doing the mission and the point is to fly really low through the valley, I'm not thinking Star Wars yet, right? When they go over the mountain and they got to shoot this one little spot, that's the Star Wars part. And then once I see that I'm thinking, oh wait, and they're flying through the valley. So then I'm thinking, so only then is the valley kind of trigger it, right? The reason I'm okay with it in this regard is a couple of reasons. First off, it makes sense why they have to fly in the valley, right? It's below radar. Obviously, if this country or this enemy has these advanced fighter jets, they're going to have the SAMs, they're going to have the surface-to-air missiles. So you have to fly below radar so that you're undetected. So there's a purpose for it, and it's real world purpose, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just like you have Star Wars, which is futuristic and sci-fi and not real, and then you have a real world application for a purpose for this, right? For flying low, and then also a real world application for having to hit a specific tiny target. However, they also made it harder in that you don't have to hit it. You don't just hit it once. You have to hit it twice, right? So they make it a little bit harder, and then they make it even harder because the other thing you have to do is fly out. You have to pull 10 Gs to then pull directly up to get over the next mountain, and then you also have a dogfight, right? After that. So I'm okay with it because it's supposed to be more real world, actual, like something that could happen, right? And that's the point. And the fact that we know that they're in planes and we know they're pulling massive Gs, like in reality, they're not in a simulator, with CGI all around them. Makes it a different experience, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about stealing, though, I didn't mind it in this case, honestly, because of that. I think, like you said, any other movie, I probably would call it out and be like, that's bullshit and whatever. But because they went the extra mile and they made it much more difficult, they made it real by putting them in real jets, pulling real Gs, I'm okay with it in this scenario. I don't think that they necessarily stole the meaning of Star Wars. They stole an idea, or they borrowed it maybe. I'm not sure. In this case, I don't mind it.
I'm just calling it steal because I feel like in order to make it a homage, would require an extra layer of acknowledgement somewhere within the film.
That's a great point.
And I don't think they ever do that. Instead, they rip that whole idea, and I would say they do take the meaning, because the meaning of that in this is to trust yourself, to trust your instincts, and that's very much reflected in this story. And then on top of that, as if all that wasn't enough, you also have Han Solo, who Hangman is ripped straight out of Han Solo. He is a combination of Iceman from the first film and Han Solo through a lot of his actions and bravado. And so, and in fact, I would say the Hangman label itself is a reference. Han, Hang, HAN, and and so I would strongly argue that they ripped a lot out of Star Wars, but at the same time, I still agree with you. I'm fine with it. Like, I was actively thinking about it in the film, like, oh, I know what they're doing. Even though I wasn't trying to, I was really just sitting trying to enjoy the film, but it was just so overt to me, and obviously to you, that it was hard to escape it.
How do you think that they could get away from that? Like, do you think that you would have thought Star Wars had the target been something different, or they had to hit it in a different way? You know, is it the target that then triggers everything else, like kind of what I was saying, or is it?
I think you're right. I think it is the target. Instead, you could have borrowed that maybe in another way by putting it on the ocean. Now, the problem with putting it on the ocean is all the visuals change, right? Now you suddenly don't get to fly through mountains and under bridges and all this other really cool visual stuff, which you got to pick your poison. And I don't disagree with them. Like, they picked the best poison. But yeah, okay. So I think you're right. I think it is the target and the methodology behind hitting the target. But great artists sometimes steal, like, you know, and what was funny is looking at the screenwriter credits, Christopher McQuarrie seems to be the Tom Cruise's guy. Like, if you go look up his writing credits for the last 15 years, it's all Tom Cruise. I mean, 90% of it, right? We're talking Valkyrie. I'm assuming that's where they first met or something. And then you have Jack Reacher, Edge of Tomorrow, Mission Impossible, The Mummy, Mission Impossible, Top Gun Maverick, Mission Impossible, Mission Impossible. Like, it's it's a lot of Tom Cruise in there. And I feel like at some point Tom Cruise is like, this guy gets it and he gets me. Let's do this. And that's awesome. I love that, actually. I think that's really cool. But yeah, and so I don't know, I guess that's the end of my Star Wars bit. Like, it's worth noting and thinking about and asking these questions, I feel like, from a creative standpoint of, when are you crossing a line? I don't know that they do, but I don't know. So that's most of the downers on the new mission. I think there's the fun, though. There's the fun side of the mission, which is, will Maverick make it? They've set the impression up from the opening that he's done for, right? We see him almost die at the beginning, where he crashes, he pushes the envelope, crashes the scramjet, and we're left to wonder, is he okay? And naturally we're assuming yes, but we don't really know. We don't know where they're going to take this story. And so I'm like, maybe he's hobbled, you know, maybe he can't fly anymore, or maybe his confidence is shaking. None of that. But they do point out the future is coming and you're not in it, which doubles down on the whole pilot thesis that we've been talking about. But then when Maverick is talking about the mission, the first time he sees it, he says point blank, someone's not coming home from this. And so they're really trying to set the stage for, there's going to be a price, and it's going to be Maverick. And of course it ends up not being the case, but it makes you wonder several times at the end, that are they going to pass the torch to Rooster? Is Maverick dead? And of course, no. But it doesn't feel like, of course, in the moment. Like, in the moment, you're just like, I don't know what they're about to do. That's a cool feeling.
That is a cool feeling, because you're right. Like, I was expecting someone to die, and I was expecting that because they said a couple of times, well, they said someone's not coming back from this, and it just, it makes you think that there is going to be a price, and of someone's life. And so I'm expecting it. Here it comes. Here it comes. Whereas other movies don't necessarily do that. And then it happens and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. So they did the opposite of that almost. That's really cool.
It's really smart, right? Set the stage, make it feel inevitable. And that way you feel much better when it's not. That's that. Yeah, absolutely. I also love there's this nice short little montage voiceover that they do. So they're filling the first phase of the run, right? The trenches, the trench run. And then we move into phase 2 and he's like, okay, y'all are still screwing that up, but we got to move on. We got a week now. They cut the time down, right? And so now everything's compressed. Always something you want to do in an action film is remove the benefit of time. Every action film is going to do that. We thought we had 6 months, but we got to do it tomorrow, right? Yeah, like it's every time. And it works. It creates the higher stakes and the tension of failure on the horizon. And so he moves into phase 2, and while giving them the details of phase 2, right, the whole bombing run and the high G maneuver, right, we're intercutting with his voiceover their failed attempts at doing these things that he's saying. It's hard. And I love that. It's underscoring the mission's difficulty as he's describing it. And in doing that, right, it's really efficient. That's really strong, efficient storytelling because it's doing all the things we were just talking about, which is making it feel like this cannot be done. They're going to fail. Someone's going to die, and nuclear war is upon us. So really nice use of a montage there for story efficiency and, maximizing the danger. I've already talked about Rooster. And then there's this great little Easter egg, because at the end of the film, they're about to land. There's this very subtle buzz of the tower, and they hit it, but they don't call it out. And I love that. It's an Easter egg for fans. Like, if you are familiar with the first film, you know exactly what just happened. But if you're not, it just looks like a thing. Whatever. Like, oh yeah, that whatever John Hamm's character is, Admiral Simpson is. He felt that pass by. But no, it's a very strong callback if you know what you're looking at. And I loved it because you kind of keep waiting for a buzz the tower moment.
And they could have made it so cheesy, like him to request it. They just said them to say negative Ghost Rider pattern is full, and then do it anyway. Or maybe Admiral Simpson has a cup of coffee in his hand and is drinking, and then it spills it all over. Like, no, they're not going to do any of that because that's not real, right? And they just do it. I love that point. Great point.
Absolutely. Now we can get into some of, this is my last segment, I guess. I do think there was some bloat. I do think if I knew they were going to probably add 20, 30 minutes beyond what the first film was doing because it's a bigger film. But I don't think they maximized their runtime. I think the bar scene at the beginning ran way too long. And I thought they threw way too many names at us. At a certain point, call signs could become a bit hokey. And so I think the fewer, the better. Like, if you don't have, 10, or in this case, there was probably at least 15, maybe as many as 20 call signs that they throw at you. It dilutes the power of a call sign while also making it harder to remember who's who. I think if they would have just waved a hand like, oh man, those are other great pilots, it didn't have to be, let's name every single person in this bar. That was and just in general, that bar scene just ran probably 6 or 7 minutes too long to me. Not great. I thought this is a love-hate kind of thing right here, because I loved how they used Iceman overall. I thought, I think you said it incredibly well. Like, he's the one that progressed, and it makes sense why he also has a strong affinity towards Maverick. He's in a position of power, and what they experienced in the first film totally makes sense to me why he is still feeling it 35 years later. He's still looking after his guy all this time later because of what they experienced in that first film. It absolutely works. And so I think they used him really, really well. But, and this is my asterisk, I thought the meeting in person was a really weak scene. That scene really bugged me because mostly it's just Maverick talking to himself without getting any real new revelation. It's just faux growth. Like, he never really grows in this film, which I'm generally fine with. I don't think he necessarily needed to, though I think there's probably some opportunity for it. But the first film, they made him, they gave him a crisis of confidence, which is, the epicenter of being a pilot is your confidence. You need to be fearless when you're doing that job. And if you're not, you need to go away. There's no space in the air for someone who isn't absolutely fearless and confident in their ability to execute. And so it made sense in the first film, give him a crisis of confidence and then force him to choose to regain his confidence. They put that on him because as a pilot, as we said in the last episode, like, it is incumbent on you to make those decisions and to live and die by your decisions. And if you can't do that for yourself, no one else can do it for you. And you shouldn't be flying. And so your point that you made when we were talking about it was Viper threw it back onto Maverick. He never said, I think you should, or here's what you should do. He left it entirely up to Maverick. And in this film, they used Iceman as this attempt to kind of recreate this feeling that he's overcoming something. And I just never felt that he was overcoming anything. It felt like a very weak attempt at reflecting personal growth when that setup was never there. And so you can't really have the payoff. And I just didn't think that was a good use of runtime. Now, it was a great use of Iceman to also kill him off so that you can now threaten his position and have all these other revelations, right? He gets to buck the system, prove his merit, and earn his role in the final run. That was all great. The meeting itself needed to be either reworked or just cut.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I love seeing Val Kilmer, and I thought he did a great job. My problem isn't with him. My problem is with the writing. Yeah.
Oh, I sorry, I disagree. I think the whole him typing those few lines I thought was really great, and then the whole the last line he typed, what was it? It was time to let go, and then just let Mav sit with it. Mav asked him, I think 2 or 3 other questions, and he just didn't answer. He just looked at him, and then he had to just decide that it was okay to allow Rooster that like his whole thing was, I want to protect this kid, like the whole time for the last 30 years or something. And that was why Rooster was mad at him in the first place. And so I think he knew that Rooster had it in him, but he didn't want to send him. But he, and it was and it was also him letting go of flying, of being that guy, which he's held on to for 35 years, which is why he never advanced, because he didn't want to stop flying, because he wanted to be that guy. And he's been running from Penny for however long he'd been running from Penny. Like, he hurt her a couple of times and everything because he would go off and do these missions or go off and, fly these jets and stuff. So I don't know. I bought it.
I think that's an incredibly generous interpretation of what happened in that scene. I think you're doing them a lot of favors. Ooh, damn it. No, not today. Motherfucker, I just bought you. Okay. Yeah, I think I love everything you just said. I think that's really strong. I think you should have wrote that scene. But again, it's minor because overall it still didn't hurt me in this movie experience. The one thing that did kind of sting me was Penny. I hated terribly misallocated one Jennifer Connelly. Like, you have an all-time great in here, and she's playing this garbage role. Like, I really hated this character because to me, they use her as a reprieve from action sequences, which is fine. I don't necessarily mind that. But otherwise, what is she really used for? She's used as exposition for us to hear about Rooster's papers, right? The reason Rooster hates Maverick. That's really the only purpose there, right? I guess if you really want to be like cynical, which I kind of am, I would say it's also a way to bolster Maverick as the man, right? But one who is maturing, right? He's no longer shirking responsibility and breaking hearts. He's someone who's ready to mature and settle down and be the good guy. It just feels like a really cheap way to use her. I went in expecting her to be somewhere in the academy, or either another pilot, either maybe one of his co-pilots, maybe you could swap Hondo out, his right hand man. I don't really know what Hondo's function is as a Navy man, but you could swap her out with Hondo and reallocate all those beats into that character, or just cut her character entirely and reallocate some of that exposition onto Hondo and flesh his character out and make him and the camaraderie between him and Maverick a bigger storyline, while also slimming down the story by 12, 14 minutes. And that way you have a much tighter, more rewatchable film. Top Gun, the first one, is super rewatchable because it's not going to run you 2.5 hours. And they're very efficient. They're hitting all their story beats quickly and, with a pretty strong right. Here, Penny is really frustrating because she's just a prop. She's not a real character. And this gets into the idea of a Mary Sue. Now, depending on who you're talking to, what a Mary Sue, qualifies as is very widely interpreted. And I'm using it very loosely here. Generally, Mary Sue is kind of looked at as a character who's just a woman who has no flaws. She's a little too perfect, has a little bit too many of the answers. And they give her these superficial flaws, like she's too perfect and she's almost like a Hermione, right? She's just always on top of it and you're annoyed at how good she is. Like it's not a real humanistic view of a person. And Penny largely fits a lot of those definitions. And she has no flaws. She's a really good mom. And she's only gotten to be a better mom and, et cetera, et cetera. And she just really serves no purpose to the story other than to be a woman for Maverick, to win over. And in that way, it's really frustrating that they use Jennifer Connelly in this way. I would much rather her have been either, I assumed she was going to be a CO, like his commanding officer or someone upper in that hierarchy. And someone for him to wrestle with, because the nice thing about Charlie in the first film was she could challenge him on her expertise. Like she wasn't there to just be run over. And whereas Penny in this one is just a cheerleader. She's just telling him, you're Maverick and here's who you are. It's really, I don't know, frustrating for me as just a fan of this world and also of Jennifer Connelly, that she didn't get to have a more powerful, meaningful role. I don't know.
I would agree with you there. I would agree with you there. Yeah.
Oh,
that's a very good point.
Yeah. So that's my drawbacks. All that said, it's still always good to see her on screen, but this is still a really strong movie. I get giddy just watching the trailer still. Like it has all the vibes and it's going to be around for a while. I love it because for years, I bet they were begging for a sequel to Top Gun, right? How often in Hollywood do you get an iconic, massive hit that doesn't get a follow-up? Like it's so incredibly rare. And the fact that we didn't get 5 Top Guns, I am so grateful for, that we didn't see this franchise fall off. And instead, we fast forward and now we get to re-experience Maverick and all his glory and follow the logic of who he is now and why he's progressed the way he is, because he's still Maverick. He's still the same Maverick, and I mean that in the not proper noun way, the more adjective. And I love that they didn't wear this franchise out, although they might now. There might now be 3 more sequels to this. But
I hope not.
Yeah, same. I would be okay if they left it here. But if not, they have a nice template with Rocky and Creed, right? To transition into Rooster Top Guns. Or I wouldn't want plural. I would want maybe at the most a couple years from now, 1 Rooster film and then be out. But I'm okay if they never do another one. I'm totally satisfied with that. Yeah. How do you feel about sequels?
For this, I hope they don't do another one for 30 more years. And then they could harken back to Tom Cruise, or he could be like this old guy or something or whatever. I think that's great, but I don't want to see it for a decade at least. Nothing else. Because you just can't, I don't know. I think one of the other reasons why this worked is because the technology is different now, right? Now the idea of having these planes that can do these crazy things is, I think that they could do a lot of them back then too in '86, but it's advanced, right? And the way that we've shot it has advanced into different territory. And I think if you just do it again, it would be very much similar. It would be very similar to this in the next 5 years. But if you wait another 3 decades, I'm sure cameras will be different, shooting styles will be different, angles will be different. Maybe a lot of stuff will be similar, but technology will be different. The planes themselves will be different. And that actually lends itself probably more to the story, than if you were to do it in the next 5 years. I don't have any interest to see Miles Teller in a sequel as the main character. I love him in this movie. I think he's freaking amazing. He's an incredible actor, but he is not Tom Cruise in 1986. He is not. This character that they gave him is not of Top Gun caliber, if that makes sense. Like there's not enough arrogance. There's not enough, bolstering his ego. It's just, I'm just not ready for that, honestly.
I love that you brought up Miles Teller, because I'm the same. Like, I loved him in this film. I'm not a big Miles Teller fan. And what I'm finding out about him and how I perceive him is that I hate him whenever he's doing these comedic, lighthearted, schlocky, Vince Vaughn kind of impersonations. And I know he's not doing an impersonation, but that's just how I perceive it whenever he's being this super cocky, over the top guy. But I love him when he's doing these super dramatic, Rooster or Whiplash like roles. I think he's incredible, which to me is like the gift, right? That those are the kind of films that I would rather watch anyway, and that he excels in those roles says a lot. And so I hope he continues to do much more heavy dramatic work, because you're right, he is incredibly talented, and I love seeing him in these more severe kind of roles. But I also love that they cast him at all in this, because he's a lot taller than Tom Cruise. He's like 5 inches taller, and that's not a little. Like, it's pretty rare to see someone like Tom Cruise stationed right next to someone taller than him. And they leaned into it. They were completely fine with it. They didn't hide it. And I was really impressed and appreciated it. For one, it certainly ties into him and Goose, Rooster and Goose, being father-son, taller guys, works really well. But
that scene where he's like mad at him and he's about his dad or whatever, like they showed a side shot as he walks up to him, and he towers over Tom Cruise, and which I think in our experience of Tom Cruise movies has been like a thing where, like, he outwardly doesn't like that. Like, he doesn't like it. He'll wear like platform shoes and stuff like that, so that he's more eye level with his fellow actors. But in this case, that's another reason I love Tom Cruise, man. Like, it's about the story and the character. Yeah. And, he knows. So in 1986, he wasn't as big, obviously, as he is now. He didn't have as many films under his belt. He was huge. He was the biggest actor in the world, but or close to it, but not really until Top Gun was he like that. And so he wasn't, the guy who would say, you know what, I am not shooting this because Goose is 6 inches taller than me, whatever. He turned into that after Top Gun. Yeah. But before it was what it was. And Goose is 6 inches taller than him. And they'll show him walking down the runway and Goose is towering over him. So they do it again. And he just puts all that aside, the last 35 years of his career aside, of being that way for the story. Miles needs to be 6 inches taller than me because Goose was. Okay, we're going to do that. And I love that. I think that's awesome. He just like sacrifices for the film. It's a little sacrifice. Don't get me wrong. It's not really a sacrifice. It's just maybe an egocentric sacrifice. But it was one that I noticed,
But yes, I also want to just call back to what you said at the beginning, which is Tom Cruise. I'm a Tom Cruise fan. Like, I don't follow celebrities and their personal lives. And so him, jumping on couches. I know he had a phase where everyone hated him. And I think that's finally kind of circled back and everyone loves generally Tom Cruise again. I've always kind of been right there with him. But what you said earlier was I hadn't really thought about how true it is that he loves film, and he gives 100% to every single project he's in, even if it turns out to be a really terrible project. And those happen. Jack Reacher 2 and Night and Day were god awful films. But also could see he gave everything to those films. And that's the kind of people I want to work with, to be honest. Someone who, no matter what, it's really about the film, and they're going to bring their obsession to it. And sometimes that'll annoy you as a creator to have someone that loves what they're doing so much that they won't stop bugging you and trying to make it better. That's the best problem in the world to have. Like, I've worked with actors like that and I don't know if I've ever been that actor. I can be pretty passive on other people's projects, but maybe I might be that a little bit more, in future projects. But I love that about him. Like, he is obsessive, and I want to work with obsessed people who just, it's not about anything else other than let's create this and make it the best it can possibly be. I love.
Yeah, but yes, exactly. And there are other actors that are like that, but he has this thing about him. So that, Daniel Day-Lewis and Christian Bale, and, where you can just tell they love this and they're going to give 1,000% no matter what is asked of them. But there's this almost like lightheartedness, it feels like, with Tom Cruise. He has the same attitude, but it's different. Maybe he's just not a dick on set, and those guys are. I don't know. Maybe it comes down to just that. I have no idea, but you can see it. You can see it, and I think also he's done so many action films that it's so known that he does all his own stunts that every time you see it, you just can't believe that he's the one that jumped out of that window. He's the one who's really running. And I think that and I'll look for it, but there's videos out there of like the progression of the Tom Cruise run.
Oh, that's so good.
You know what I mean? From
he gets better technically.
Yes. From like and that's a real thing that he has actually worked on over the last 40 years of his career, is how do you run for camera, which is completely different, from actually going for a run outside or something. And he has worked on his run for 40 years. Him running in the 80s is different from him running in the 2020s. So stuff like that is just like really, really wonderful when I see it.
Ditto. Nice. Well, that's all I got, man. I don't know if you have a final. Yeah.
No, I don't have anything final. I really loved it. I love your points about the longer scenes and where things could be cut. I do agree about Penny's role. I like, the way I watch movies, I just kind of like, I'm very passive and I just let it wash over me. So I don't always see that stuff. So it's really good to talk to somebody who like takes notes and sees the things that I, would miss. And I agree with that. So
nice.
Good call. Yeah.
What are you going to recommend this week?
I'm going to stick with Tom Cruise, and I'm going to recommend Mission Impossible 1, the original.
Nice.
It is so good.
It really is.
No matter how, it could be 50 years from now, and that will be a fantastic fucking film. And same with, like almost all of them really they're just so good. And I saw a trailer for a new one coming out next year, the next Mission Impossible, in the theater for this movie when I saw it. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, Mission Impossible 1.
Dude, nice call. Yeah, I agree. That's my favorite of the franchise still.
Mm-hmm.
It's gorgeous. Brian De Palma, I love all the Dutch angles and just kind of it's so dramatic and so perfect without most of the comedy that it kind of seeped into the latter films. Nicely done. I am buying time.
Oh.
Hold on. I want to say I recently went to a movie that I loved. Where are you? Movies. Oh God, no, not that. God, curse you, Wes. No, not that. Maybe I haven't seen anything recently that I love. Damn it, Wes. Okay, then I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to recommend Italian Studies. This is a film that I mentioned next week. We were recording out of sequence. We recorded next week's episode last week. And so this is a beautiful little indie drama, completely far away from anything we just talked about, or not. It's about a woman who you kind of just have to experience it, because it's a little disorienting at first, but with a purpose, because there is disorienting things happening within the story. But it stars Vanessa Kirby. It's a short film. It has a lot of natural performances, where you can see that these aren't actors. These are just people. And they put Vanessa Kirby, who is wildly talented and compelling to watch. I feel like when I watch her on screen, I feel the same when I'm watching Denzel. Like, they're just compelling to look at as they go through a scene. And I don't know beyond that what it is. They just command, they have a presence, and they just command your attention. And they chew up and steal scenes left and right. And so putting someone like her, who is just on some other planet from everyone else, and letting her act alongside these non-actors is just fascinating and really engrossing. And it's a really uncomfortable film in ways that you don't always get to experience, because there's nothing graphic or anything about the film. It's just seeing what she's doing will make you feel uncomfortable. And I loved it. It's a shorty. I want to say it's less than 90 minutes. And it's streaming on Hulu at the moment. But wherever, I would recommend checking it out. I love watching her. I study her along with a handful of other actors. So check that out, and stay tuned for next week. We are going to look at the final in the trilogy of The Lord of the Rings. We'll be looking at The Return of the King, and I think we'll have a couple of special guests with Joe and Heather Howes. Any predictions on if that's going to be a good episode or not?
Oh yeah, I think it's always great to have Joe, but when Heather's on too, it's just more bang for the buck for sure. And they come to it with this just wealth of years of study and knowledge, and I'm sure that we're going to get a lot of Easter eggs and wonderful conversation out of it.
Heck to the yeah.
I predict it'll be a long one.
I think I agree. I expect it'll be very long to edit as well.
Not that I think any of our episodes are short.
Correct. Yeah. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget, subscribe or review us wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's iTunes or the other streaming apps, whatever those are, YouTube. And leave us a note if there's something you want us to talk about, the kind of things that you find interesting, or if you just want to talk about Mav and Goose and Rooster and all things fighter pilots, or Piter pilots, or whatever I've been saying.
Both.
You can do that at the Pestle podcast. Jesus, Wes. We're leaving it all in. Y'all are just going to hear me be messy this week.
Good.
thepestlepodcast.com/Top Gun Maverick.
And our quote of the day today is from Napoleon Bonaparte. A leader is a dealer in hope. Oh, that's interesting. That makes you think of Mav?
It does, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the best lesson he actually learned in this film, that I thought they could have fleshed out more and made it a bigger lesson, a bigger arc for him, was the one that came from Admiral Simpson, played by John Hamm, which was, I think it was him, right? That pointed out, you've only shown them that they can't do this mission. You haven't shown them that they can. And that was his growth as a teacher. He was so hell-bent on being the best pilot, and showing them that they need to learn to get better. And he didn't do a good job of showing them how to be better. And it crushed their spirit and their ability to think this mission is something that we can actually do and get home alive, which was the point that Maverick made at the beginning, right? Which was, and we also need to show them that they can get home alive, right? And you see the expressions on the two officers' faces, and he's like, we need to show them that they can get home alive, right? And it's like that's a salient point when you're trying to get people through a mission to also convince them that there is hope. You're not just doing a suicide run here, especially a run that maybe, I don't know, the whole point of this mission could be a whole other like topic and podcast about nuclear proliferation.
I choose to not go in.
Yeah,
into
same.
Yeah.
We try to avoid those kind of landmines as much as possible, but yeah, hope. And I find that interesting because Napoleon was an incredible, strategist, and for him to, talk about hope as an important leadership quality, even though strategy is ultimately going to be just as important to victory. If you can't give your team hope, then why are they going to go into battle in the first place?
Yeah, no, exactly. And that could be used in battle, but it could also be used in just life in general. Like, why get out of bed in the morning? Why do your job? Why take the kids to the park, right? Hope is that they're going to have a happy day, and maybe that's the extent of it. Or maybe it's because they have an experience with you as a parent and they look at you with a little bit more awe. Maybe in the best of cases. But the point is that there is this little bit of hope that you should hold on to for whatever it is that you're doing, or at least try to find it, right? You don't want to just roll out of bed every morning and do what you have to do for no reason at all, right? There's a purpose for it. What is that purpose? Okay, let's get down to it. Yeah, and I think at its core, every decision you make is probably based on something like this. It's based on on hope. So that's a great quote. Good job, man.
Nice.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
This is a long time coming and so much fun, man. Thank you for the insights you brought. I think it was really solid, and now I got to go see it another 4 or 5 times in the theater. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Top Gun Maverick. Please, like Wes said, share us with your friends. Make sure to like and subscribe and review us on iTunes, and tell us what you'd like to hear us cover. We'd love to hear from you. Until next week, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.